Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today in the co-captain's chair, once again, Mr. Jon Neudorf from up in Canada. Hello, my friend. How are you today?
Hello, I'm really good, Pete. Thanks for having me again. It's awesome.
John and I were just talking of the challenges of the back-to-school situation here in COVID, because John and so many other people I know are teachers, and what a difficult time it is right now as we kind of are here at the beginning of September, and so much is still up in the air. But a good way to deal with all this stuff that's up in the air is to talk about music and to talk about good bands, right? So we've been having requests on the channel for a long time for people, from people to say, Pete, what about Manfred Mann's Earth Band? And quite frankly, it's a band I like quite a bit. And John and I were talking when we did the Moody Blues show about a month ago. I was like, do you by any chance like Manfred Mann's Earth Band? He's like, I do. I'm like, want to do that show with me? He's like, I do. So here we are. I probably spent a lot of time going through these albums again, because there's 15 true Manfred Mann Earth Band albums. Those are the ones we're going to cover. I've got all of them but 4 of them on CD, but I've heard all of them. But it was really cool for me to kind of go through and re-listen to all these albums again, because as much as I like them, I probably haven't listened to the Earth Band in a bunch of years. I went through a period of time where I was listening to these guys quite a bit, and then maybe the last 5 years or so, other than maybe pulling out the Roaring Silence here and there, maybe 1 or 2 of the other ones, I really haven't gone on a Manfred Mann's Earth Band binge, so to speak, until the last 2 weeks. So this was a lot of fun. I'm sure John did the same thing, right? It's always great when you revisit these catalogs like this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like you, Pete. I hadn't listened to them, in actually many years, really, because, I probably said the same thing with the Moody Blues. I mean, we're doing so much new music, and a lot of reviewing, and so it's kind of hard sometimes to get, listen to those old classics. And I've always liked the band. I only have about eight CDs of theirs, but I was kind of exposed in the 70s to them, and again through my brother, we kind of explored a little bit. I think Angel Station was the first one that I heard. It might have been Roaring Silence, and then kind of and then we kind of went from there. But it's been years since I've listened to them, and I certainly hadn't listened to anything after Somewhere in Africa. But so that was, we can get into that. We'll get into that right away. But it's been nice catching up with the band, for sure.
Yeah, and John brings up a really good point. That is probably the most difficult thing for us journalist type people who, that's what we do. We review new releases by new and old bands. It's like sometimes there's so much to renew that so much of our free time is spent listening to stuff that we need to digest and write about, that our old favorites kind of fall by the wayside a little bit. And then when we have to do that, that's the great thing about doing shows like this on YouTube, is because it forces me to go and revisit stuff that I really like. And it's like, all right, got to put this big stack of new CD releases off to the side for the next week, because I got to go and redigest this catalog again. And it's a lot of fun. So I really have enjoyed it. So in saying all that, I'm going to have John kick us off with his number 15.
Okay, number 15 on the list. I don't own the album, and it is Mask. Songs and Planets. I think it's 1987.
Yep.
And this is a completely different band than the 70s Manfred Mann. I mean, it is the 80s after all, but different vocalists, and not bad vocalists. They're fine. And I don't know, like the first song, Joybringer, kind of the remake from Solar Fire, it's okay, but the whole album is kind of this glossy 80s kind of synth pop sound. And I like synth pop. If I want to listen to synth pop, I'm going to put on some Depeche Mode, maybe some Ultravox, maybe some Human League. I mean, I'd have to dig them out, but I'm probably not going to put on Manfred Mann so much. It's it's well done pop music. What can I say? There's really They get into some jazzy stuff. Wasn't a big fan of Sister Billy's Bounce. What else have they got on here? Neptune Icebringer is kind of more pop music. My favorite track is probably that hymn from Jupiter. I thought that was a pretty catchy tune, some nice, lush synthesizers on it. But I probably won't be acquiring Mask anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on some great
So,
points there, and I think a lot of the latter period stuff kind of falls into that category. We'll talk more about Mask in a minute or two. My number 15 is going to be Soft Vengeance from 1996. That's the bottom of the barrel for me. You know, a lot of the album is just really kind of sappy mid-90s pop music. And again, like you said, not that that's a bad thing, because there's plenty of sappy mid-90s pop music out there that's actually not too bad. I just don't know if I want to hear Manfred Mann's Earth Band doing that, but I guess like a lot of bands from the 70s or, Manfred from the 60s kind of fell into that trap of let's just kind of do what everybody else is doing, follow what's selling. Didn't really work for them, right? I actually think Soft Vengeance, listening to it today, probably would have sold pretty well or done better 10 years prior, because you're talking about Mask from 87. I think Soft Vengeance actually works better as a 1986 album than it does a 1996 album. Again, not terrible, a lot of covers. I mean, that's the one thing I think that kind of followed this band throughout their career. They did a lot of cover songs, and especially more as the years kind of went on. A lot of this album to me could have been like Survivor leftovers. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. Pleasure and Pain, Nature of the Beast, pretty catchy, kind of memorable, but overall, for me anyway, as a Manfred Mann's Earth Band album, pretty forgettable. So that's my number 15. Back to you for 14.
Number 14, okay. Soft Vengeance, it is. Yeah, it's, and it's hard not to compare, when you listen to, and I agree that this would work better as an 80s album probably, instead of, 1996, but it's hard not to think back of those classic Manfred Mann albums in the 70s. Anytime you listen to, a band that has had such a long career, and, well, I guess they haven't had that long a career really, but it's hard not to compare them, compare albums, and it's maybe not fair because it's different times. As you say, a lot of artists in the 80s, I mean, from the 70s going into the 80s, they were kind of, maybe this is going to sell. Prog rock was kind of, basic. It wasn't done, but the 70s prog was kind of done, right? And so this is what you get. I don't mind Pleasure and Pain. It's a pretty decent song, first track. And as you say about the covers, Manfred Mann has always been, kind of taking those some deep tracks, even weird folky songs like Dylan and Springsteen, and another one here, Shelter from the Storm. I mean, it's okay. I'd rather listen to Dylan. I mean, and I've really been getting into Dylan lately, kind of, and early Springsteen actually. So I've been listening to a lot of these, songs, and I hadn't heard, the original versions. I mean, I'd heard Shelter from the Storm, but yeah, it's just, it's okay. Again, it's not going to make it to my must-buy list anytime soon.
You bring up a good point though. For a band that has done so many covers in their career, I give them credit because they reinvent those songs and make them their own.
Totally.
And I guess kudos for that, right? Because it's not like they're, for instance, I just reviewed today the new Ace Frehley album, Ace Frehley from Kiss, and it's his covers, Origins Volume 2, it's all covers. And it's just like, it's just so by the numbers, because he's just doing, exact replicas of the originals, not even nearly as good, obviously. And he doesn't try to inject anything new into them. And I think that at least Manfred Mann's Earth Band, again, it's probably safe to say that 40% of their output over the years has been covers. But unless you knew better, sometimes you really didn't even know it was a cover, right?
No, you're right.
And that's the way to do it in my book. All right. Kind of continue along similar themes here. Number 14 for me is the 2006 album. That's what it's called, even though it was released in 2004. kind of, you know, this was a weird album. I almost reached out to John and said, hey, should we do this album? Because it's kind of billed as a Manfred Mann solo album, but it's like Manfred Mann featuring the Earth Band or something like that. Again, a weird album. This one is like a lot of electronica, couple good tracks. Demons and Dragons, pretty cool. Get Me Out of This, not bad. Mars, pretty good. You also have a couple old time Earth Band folks appearing on the album. Mick Rogers on guitar, Chris Thompson on vocals do appear on the album, so it's good to see them back again. But for the most part, it just doesn't feel like a Manfred Mann is Earth Band album, and I think it's just kind of I don't know, just doesn't really do much for me.
Okay, so we're on 13 aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, for me, it is Criminal Tango from 1986. You know, not a bad album. Again, though, and you know, he going for some covers, Going Underground by the Jam. I like the, you know, the original better though. You know, it has a lot more energy. You know, the jam version, but it's okay. Some Joni Mitchell, Banquet, that's okay. What else do we have on here? You know, a lot of you know, 80s pop music. Upbeat kind of, you know, synthesizer. You Got Me Right Through the Heart, that's okay. Rescue, kind of a slick, you know, keyboard production. And that's what I've kind of noticed about 80s Manfred Mann. It's got that kind of glossy 80s sheen to it. And again, if I want to listen to that, I'm gonna, you know, pull out, you know, Soft Cell or something. You know,
Yeah.
did that really well. And not
Yeah.
that they don't do it well. It's just, you know, not, I guess it's just not Roaring Silence. It's not Angel Station, and nor should it be. But it would have been so cool if they would have kept, you know, I don't know, didn't lose the plot so much with the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you know, I know we're both going to get to it fairly soon, I would think, but I thought, not to jump ahead of ourselves here, but I thought that Somewhere in Africa is an album where they kind of combined the proggy stuff with the early 80s direction that everybody was going in, and I thought that worked really well. And I think like albums like you know, Criminal Tango and Soft Vengeance and Mask all kind of sound really forced, like it's like, all right, this is what everybody else is doing, let's just jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
And I'll throw in a lot of synthesizers because I know my hardcore fans need to hear that, but that's all you're going to get.
Right.
Doesn't really work for me, unfortunately. So my number 13 is Mask, which you already talked about. Yeah, it sounds very little like the classic band. I find a lot of Mask is kind of like light jazzy pop fare, so to speak. Not very memorable. It's okay. A couple nice instrumentals you mentioned, Joybringer, which I like. Telegram to Monica is a cool song. You know, he tries to get kind of cute and throw some Horace Silver and Charlie Parker themes into Sister Billy's Bounce. You know, whatever. It's okay, I guess. But I find Mask pretty much just as forgettable as the other two albums I've already mentioned. They just don't really work for me. They don't. There's a reason why nobody bought them, and most fans have kind of forgotten those albums, I guess. Right? As sad as it is to say that.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of sad. I guess number 12. Yeah, you talked about 2006 or 06, kind of a, as you say, a really weird title.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a weird album, and you know, a little bit disjointed, and you know, probably doesn't feel like a Manfred Mann album, but I did like, and I couldn't find the whole album, but I listened to most of it. And I thought, you know, Demons and Dragons is a good song. And I thought Mars, you know, is kind of trying to get back to that 70s sound a little bit. I thought that was a good one. Some good keyboards on it, kind of, you know, a little dark. I liked it. Frog is a good song. It kind of reminded me of the Stranglers from Feline era Stranglers a little bit. Two Friends is another kind of a moody tune, good guitar. Chris Thompson had some good vocals on it. But yeah, I mean, I could, you know, maybe next week I put this one at number 15. I don't know. Like, I just thought, you know, some of those songs I liked a little more. than, you know, the ones from Criminal Tango and Mask and Soft Vengeance. But really, these are all kind of interchangeable for me.
Yeah.
And it just, of the ones, you know, the last of these four that we've talked about, this one, you know, I might possibly get if I saw it really cheap in a bargain bin somewhere. But it's hard to get even, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is. So.
And good luck finding those bargain bins right now.
Yeah. But anyway, it's not bad, but yeah.
I will say if half the album was like Demons and Dragons, I think it would be totally worth getting. That's actually a really good song.
It is.
For me, the one song that really stuck out was like, wow, this is the best thing they've done in years. And then the rest of the album is not like that at all.
No, that is an excellent song. It's too bad they didn't kind of continue more in that vein, but
yeah. Oh,
c'est la vie.
Yeah. All right. Where are we? Number 12? My number 12, Criminal Tango. Mired in the 80s, 1986. Again, we got half covers, half originals. I think his keyboard work is very good on this album, I think. I find some of the songs lacking. I mean, Crossfire, great instrumental. That's a really good tune. You mentioned Going Underground by The Jam, written by Paul Weller. I'm not a huge Jam fan, but I think that they do a pretty good job with that. It's kind of upbeat, kind of poppy hard rock tune. Who Are the Mystery Kids is good. Rescue, it's like a middling album for them. It's not terrible. It's not very good. It's not awful. Kind of far removed from their classic sound, but I think, you can easily pick out 3 or 4 decent tracks from it. So I think this is probably, for me, where the slide really, really starts showing. I think from here on in, I think, in my opinion, most of these other albums are pretty damn good for the most part.
Agreed. Okay, I think number 11, isn't it? Number 11?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go with Manfred Mann's Earth Band, just a self-titled 1972. I don't own the album, but that's one where I'll probably want to, there it is, yes. Yeah, I just never, for whatever reason, but you have the classic lineup, the early classic lineup, right? Mick Rogers, who's, an underrated guitar player. Well, I don't know if he's underrated, but he's an excellent guitar player.
Very good.
And a very good vocalist. And, so I think, and before that, it wasn't Manfred Mann's Earth Band, but Mann was kind of more, kind of pop, kind of jazzy stuff from the 60s. And I think this is where they kind of, developed that kind of hard rock, classic rock sound, in 1972. Opening song, kind of the rhythm and R&B-ish, California Coastline, that's an excellent tune. Sloth is another excellent tune. Some really good guitar playing on that one. Another kind of a weird Dylan cover, Please Mrs. Henry. And I forget which album. I was just listening to the Dylan version the other day, because I have the Dylan album. And it's kind of one of those kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of weird, Dylan lyrics. It's actually kind of a gospel version, and I give the band credit. And this is kind of what you talked about before, how he takes these, these folky, tunes from Springsteen, Dylan, or whatever, and Joni Mitchell, what have you, and he kind of turns them into, his own. And this one isn't so much; it's not really prog, but he turns it into this rhythm and blues gospel piece, which is, pretty cool. Tribute is a really good instrumental, some really good moody keyboards on it. Prayer is another good classic rock song. And so, yeah, I think it's an excellent album. I'd probably rate it 4 stars if I was going to do a review on Sea of Tranquility. So there you go.
Yeah. So let's talk about the lineup here again. So we got Mick Rogers on guitar and vocals, and I want to reiterate what John was saying before. Actually, a very underrated vocalist and underrated guitar player. A really talented musician, I think. Mr. Mann on organ, synths, and vocals. Colin Pattenden on bass, and everybody's favorite drummer, Chris Slade, with hair at the time, I might add. And John and I are on the same level here. First album is also my number 11, from 1972. Probably, for some people, might rank it higher. And all I'll say is that don't take a number 11 ranking, meaning either of us dislike this album because I think it's a fine album. It's more of like a kind of like early 70s bluesy rock album, like you said, as opposed to what was going to come after it. But I think the band's still kind of like not really hitting their stride yet, but still very good. Captain Bobby Stour rocks pretty hard. Got a lot of Manfred Mann soloing on it. Living Without You is catchy. It's a Randy Newman song. I think they do that very, very well. Tribute Mention, great song, great guitar solos. Jump Sturdy is a kind of funky hard rocker. You mentioned Prayer. It's got some great lead guitar. Solid album. Not quite to the level of the greatness that's going to come, but I think they're on their way. So that's my number 11 as well. We got a tie on that one.
Agreed. Yeah, good album.
Yep.
Okay, so number 10, another one I do not have, and that will be Glorified, Magnified, 1972. And I suppose you have that one, Pete?
I do. Let me just find it. It's here somewhere. Where are we? Here we go.
Yeah. And I hadn't listened to it before, so I'm glad I did. It's a really good album, and I think now they're starting to kind of, although it's not really, I wouldn't say it's progressive per se, but there's some proggy bits on it, and it's kind of, you can kind of hear a couple of times, a couple of spots where there, maybe Solar Fires to Come, etc. But they're still kind of rooted in that bluesy hard rock, classic rock sound. Meat, opening track, kind of a heavy tune. It's good. Kind of some weird vocals on it, but I still like it. Excellent. Look Around is a really good, good meaty riffs on that one. One Way Glass, another excellent song. A little bit more solemn, kind of poignant. A really good synth solo on that one, I thought. And that's kind of where he's kind of, exploring more keyboard sounds, I think, on this one, as, compared to the first album or the one before. And what else do we have? Another Dylan song, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. And I love the original, and actually they do a really nice job of it. And they don't kind of make it any, a prog, whatever workout. It's kind of, acoustic strumming, but it's a really pretty song. Wind is another good one. Some really good synthesizer on that one. Ashes to the Wind is another excellent song. What else do we have? Yeah, bluesy, down home, kind of bluesy rock. And I think they're kind of getting away from the bluesiness a little bit. It's still here on this album, but they're kind of expanding their sound palette a little broader. And I think it's kind of pointing in the direction where they're going to go on the next album. A little bit.
Yeah, and I think John and I are going to talk a lot about this kind of progression for them because, in listening to this catalog again, and I think what I did a couple times is I went and listened to them from the first album all the way to the most recent. And it's amazing to hear the change in maturity and growth from album to album to album. And you don't see or hear that often with a lot of bands. Usually it's like, they release an album, then it just automatically clicks. Here it was like this slow, steady growth over 2 or 3 albums, and then wham, it's like, all of a sudden, like you see where they got to from the humble beginnings to, those real classic albums that we're going to talk about soon. So a very cool progression, I think. And you really see it from the first album and the second album and then the third album and then the fourth album. It's like, it's
right.
It's really cool to kind of just like witness this as it happens. So, all right, what are we? Number 10. Okay. So my number 10 is 1983 Somewhere in Africa. Okay. Fine album. Again, to go back to what I said earlier, I think this for me was a direction they should have stayed on, which they kind of didn't. So here it's got, combination of electro pop, world music, prog. The Africa Suite is a cool 4-part piece, kind of finishes off the album. A lot of fun. Eyes of Nostradamus, great song. You got Mr. Trevor Rabin, all right, obviously from Yes and Rabbit, appears on the catchy Runner as well as Redemption song. You got a pretty cool cover of Demolition Man by the Police, which I like quite a bit. Tribal Statistics, another really great rocker. A lot of fantastic Manfred Mann synths all over this album. And, it's an 80s sounding album, but I think they did a good job of kind of keeping some of their past and moving into the future without forgetting the past and just throwing themselves into what everybody else was doing. So yeah, I like this. And some of this was played on the radio, and probably the last big album for them, I think. So that's my number 10.
Number nine. Okay, number 9 is Chance for me. It's a good album, and they're kind of exploring those 80s sounds. This is, even though this is before Somewhere in Africa, it's kind of a little bit more pop, but still there's still proggy moments on it. The first 3 tracks I think are just excellent. Lies Through the 80s, I love that song. On the Run, really good song. For You is another really good one. Stranded is kind of like an excellent song, kind of haunting. Adolescent Dream, that's a good one too. Frisk the Blank is kind of a quirky instrumental that Manfred Mann is so good at. And again, the keyboards and the synthesizers are all over the place. And there's the guitar maybe isn't as strong or as much of it, I guess, as compared to the 70s albums, but it's still pretty good. And I forget who plays on this album. I forgot to write the lineup. I know Chris Thompson is singing. I don't know if maybe you do, Pete, if Mick Rogers, I think he's on the album, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
anyway,
I don't remember.
I can't remember, but it's a good album, and yeah, I really like it. And again, it's too bad that he didn't continue with what he did on Somewhere in Africa and Chance, kind of continuing that through the 80s. But we can't really do anything about that now. So
exactly. So all right, so we got joining him on the album is Pat King on bass, right. John Lingwood on drums, guitars. Oh, Trevor Rabin's on this album as well. I had forgotten that. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that Trevor Rabin playing the guitars on For You? I thought that was him.
It could be.
Mick Rogers is on this album, as well as Steve Waller, Jeff Whitehorn, and Robbie McIntosh.
Yeah, so, Steve Waller is a good guitar player as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, all right, cool. All right, where am I? So, number 9. So, Glorified Magnified from 72 is my number 9. Again, yeah, like John said, they're still kind of looking for their sound. It's kind of big bluesy, hard rock, a little bit of jazz rock, a little bit of prog, not quite there yet. Look Around, good hard rocker. Meat, like you mentioned, heavy, but also kind of some furious jazz fusion going on there. I'm Gonna Have You All. And Our Friend George, more bluesy hard rock tunes. Title track is a kind of cool jam with lots of Manfred Mann solos on Hammond and Mini Moog, because he was using the Mini Moog synthesizer quite a bit around this time. Good album. I think this is just about where they're just hitting their stride, I think. And the best is yet to come.
Okay. Number 8. Is it number 8?
Yes.
Number 8. For me, it's Somewhere in Africa. And as you said, it's a really good album, and the pop music, some progginess, that African vocals, that world music sounds. I like the Police, Demolition Man. I thought that was a really good cover, and I just the vocals on this album are outstanding. It didn't really remind me of Paul Simon's Graceland album, but vocally, like some of those African vocalists are just so good. And combined with Chris Thompson, it just really works well. Eyes on Nostradamus, really good Al Stewart cover. A Redemption Song, of course, Marley. That it's a really good version. And that Africa Suite is just excellent. Some real proggy moments on there, and as you said, the synthesizer is all over the place on this album, so it's just a really good album.
It's funny you mentioned Paul Simon there, because Paul and Peter Gabriel made a lot of money doing that kind of world music thing where they were including African rhythms and all this kind of stuff in their music, and they milked that, especially Peter Gabriel milked that for many years, and did very well with it. I mean, these guys just kind of did it on this one album and then forgot about it. I think that's kind of like a wasted moment there. It's like they should have stayed with that a little bit.
And given the fact that, you know, he's from South Africa, Manfred Mann, so
Yeah,
kind of an indictment, you know, against apartheid. So yeah, I'm surprised he didn't actually kind of, you know, go back to those sounds, given his, you know, his birthplace.
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of a little bit surprising.
Didn't happen. Oh well.
Oh, well.
Lost opportunity in my book.
Yep, I agree.
All right, my number 8, Chance from 1980. You know, like John mentioned, it's a little poppy, got electronica creeping into the music. However, for me, the reason why it's ranking up there pretty high is because I think there's some couple spectacular tunes on here. Lies is a great song, man. I used to hear that on the radio all the time, all through the 80s. I mean, what it's great arena rock song, right? So catchy. Got great synths all over that song from Mann. Really good. I absolutely love the cover of For You, another Springsteen cover, right? It's big, it's heavy, huge riffs. Chris Thompson, great vocals on that. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger or better than those two songs right there. The rest of the album doesn't quite live up. On the Run is good. Fritz the Bank is good. Stranded, I think you mentioned as well. I think that for me, half of this album is exceptional. The other half is solid. But the exceptional stuff, I think, just kind of pushes it up a couple notches for me. So I could listen to Lies and For You all day long. Love them. Great stuff.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, number 7, another album I do not have, and that is Messen from 1973. Pete's going to dig that one out. There it is. Yeah. And yeah, it's an excellent album. Some, you know, you got that bluesy hard rock, and but you still have a lot more synth kind of popping in there. Some proggy touches. Buddha is an excellent song, kind of a mellower tune. Then it gets gets heavier and mellow again. So, you know, it's excellent. So that's kind of a progressive song. Cloudy Eyes is another one I really like. Some really good bluesy riffs. Get Your Rocks Off, another solid, you know, 70s hard rock tune. Sad Joy, I really like that one as well. The excellent guitar work on this one. Black and Blue, again, kind of bluesy hard rock. And that's kind of what you get with this album. And, you know, and kind of leads right into my wheelhouse. That's kind of what I've been listening to the last couple of years, is exploring more of the 70s hard rock. And this album, if you like 70s hard rock, this is an excellent album. And
that excuse me, that is their big hard rock record, I think.
Yeah.
They've got, you know, hard rock elements throughout a lot of their albums, but I think that's the one where it just really all clicked. That's if you like 70s hard rock, I'm not gonna call it proto metal. It's kind of like trying to think of a comparison. Like if you take like Deep Purple and Uriah Heep and that sort of thing, that's the album I send people to if they like that kind of big Hammond organ, some synths and crunchy guitars, and that probably is my favorite album when it comes to Mick Rogers' guitar playing. He's like all over that album. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, excellent album.
All right, I'm going to go my number 7 from 1979, Angel Station. Really good album. A lot of good prog rock originals from Mr. Mann on this album, which I think is one of the things that kind of sets this album apart. It's more of an album where they decide to write most of the material. Very keyboard heavy album. Don't Kill a Carol, Bell of the Earth, great song. Angels at My Gate has some kind of really cool like talk box and slide guitar solos. You got Hollywood Town, Resurrection, Waiting for the Rain. Top to bottom, very listenable, very memorable, good rockin', good proggy album. And I mean, come on, that album cover is one of the great ones. Look at that. Just how mysterious is that? So I dig it. Yeah, it's a really good album.
I agree. Okay, we're kind of heading right down here. Number 6, I think we're at.
Yep.
And it is for me, it's The Good Earth from, oh geez, what year is this from?
74.
1974.
Yeah.
And I hadn't listened to the album in a long time, but it is an excellent, excellent album. And I think this is kind of where they're really starting to, more so than the previous ones, they're starting to get proggy now. Give Me the Good Earth, but it still has a bluesiness like the first song. Give Me the Good Earth, excellent song. Launching Place, an outstanding guitar solo on that one. And Mick Rogers is a really good guitar player and a very good vocalist as well, as we said earlier. I'll Be Gone is kind of a little bit of southern flavor. I like it. Earth Hymn, I think it's kind of a soaring kind of, vocally, and some gentle guitar. But part two, it kind of gets spacey and really progressive, spacey, kind of really moody. Some excellent keyboard sounds on it. I just think overall, The Good Earth is kind of where he's starting to explore more of those interesting keyboard sounds. That's what Manfred Mann, to me, is really known for. And I think he does a really good job on The Good Earth from 1974.
I love your your description of spacey, because I think, and we're going to get to it in a minute or two, but half of that album reminds me of kind of like trademark space rock, too, for lack of a better term, right? Like little bits of like Hawkwind and Pink Floyd and Tangerine Dream and that sort of thing. And I think he does a spectacular job on that album. So we'll get to that in a minute. My number 6, Watch from 1978. This baby right here. Lots of memorable songs on here and great production on this album. Really good production. This is 1978, so late in the 70s. Good mix of hard rockers, got some prog, got some pop. I think this might be the album, maybe this and Roaring Silence are the two albums that I think mix everything that they did so well in the 70s all together. Circles, terrific song. California, terrific song. Martha's Madman, Davy's on the Run Again. Great lead guitar from. So here we got, and a bunch of these albums right in the middle of the decade. You got Dave Flett on lead guitar, excuse me, who took over for Mick Rogers, and actually it's him who plays that great guitar solo on their big, huge hit from the 70s, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. And I think Chris Thompson is absolutely on his A game throughout this whole album. So I like this album. Love the cover. Another great cover from them. They have a lot of really good album covers. Well, maybe not a lot, but a few of them are extraordinary. And I like this one quite a bit.
Yeah,
so that's my number 6. Yeah, isn't it really? I mean, just take a look at this, everybody. I mean, this is really cool. Really cool. And if you kind of open the whole thing up, you get the whole picture there. Pretty neat. Definitely 70s, right?
Yeah, totally. And I agree about the album covers. There's some really cool ones they have. And hey, number 5. For me, it's Roaring Silence. And everyone's heard Blinded by the Light, and it's kind of interesting. I just heard the original, a couple of weeks ago when I exploring some early Springsteen now, and again, he takes this, kind of a folky Dylan kind of influence, song, and he kind of makes it this, turns it upside down, and and everyone's heard it now, but and that's kind of a huge strength of Manfred Mann. That's kind of what he does. And so, even though we've heard it 1,000 times, I still like it. Singing the Dolphin Through, or, an excellent kind of a pastoral song, really nice, pretty song. Waiter, There's a Yawn in My Ear, some really good keyboard work on that one. Road to Babylon, same thing. That's another good one. Starbird, an outstanding song. And one of my favorite Manfred Mann songs is Questions, to end the album. Kind of, one of his more poignant, I think, moments. And I think it's an original, I'm not sure. But just a beautiful performance, great vocals from Thompson, and, excellent keyboards and synthesizer from Mann. It's just a lovely song. And You know, it's this album has kind of, you know, some, you know, rockier songs, but I think for the most part, it's kind of a mellower album, and you know, it's kind of has some really haunting tunes on it, and really some pretty moments, and you know, maybe his most melodic album. Anyway, that's number 5, Roaring Silence.
So a couple comments there. So is Blinded by the Light the greatest cover song of all time? Could very well be, right?
Maybe.
Might be my favorite cover song of all time.
I mean, it is something. When you, especially when you hear the original, and I like the original, but it's so different. I mean,
so
it's
different. Yeah.
And it's not that many years, you know, after Springsteen wrote that song.
Yeah, it's like what, 2-3 years? It's not long at all. Yeah.
And he just kind of, you know, he just kind of goes crazy with it. And when it came out, I mean, you know, we haven't heard it so many times, but I mean, it's really a remarkable song when you think about it.
Absolutely. As I bought the 45, I listened to it all the time, and I still can put that song on every day and love it just as much as I did back in whatever year that was, 75, 76, whatever. Yeah, it's brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. And, you know, the Roaring Silence is their biggest selling album. And I think it speaks to the quality of this era that we're getting into right now, that speaks to the fact that the Roaring Silence, as great as it is, maybe is only a number 4, number 5, number 3 ranked album because some of the other ones are just that good.
Yeah.
You know, so crazy. All right, my number 5 is The Good Earth. Another good hard rocking record and getting quite proggy. I think on the LP, I think side 1 is mostly all covers and side 2 is originals. I think how they work that. But Give Me the Good Earth is a Gary Wright song. Gary Wright, of course, you know, from Spooky Tooth. They turn it into a big, rousing, heavy rock piece. Kind of dig it. Launching Place and I'll Be Gone are more kind of poppy, kind of proggy songs written by this band called Spectrum. I never heard of them before. I don't know anything about them. But Earth Hymn, you mentioned spacey prog rock, kind of space rock, right? Sky High, it's got lots of Hammond organ, piano, and synths. You know, before you got this kind of weird middle section that comes in that almost reminds me of Gentle Giant, which is like kind of crazy. I listened to that song, I'm like, holy crap, it's like, that sounds just like same period Gentle Giant, but really good album, kind of unique little album cover there. A little bouquet. I actually like the back cover pretty much. So another really, really good album. It's a string. They got a string of albums here that are just top notch. Probably like 5-6 albums in a row that are maybe you can even go a little more than that. That are just exceptional, absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, so strong. I mean, that run. You know, we could, you know, debate on how many you know, awesome albums that he put out in a row, but it's quite remarkable. And for me, all these albums are 5-star. We're in 5-star material now, and it just, you know, he's so consistent. And that's another, you know, when you think of what he did, you know, these albums, and when you think about, you know, Soft Vengeance, it's just so night and day.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of the bands, and most everyone, that's what was happening, and kind of going with those 80s sounds, and maybe trying to get a hit record or whatever. So yeah. Anyway, to number 4 for me, it is Angel Station, and I love the album cover as well. It's a great album cover. Yeah, I think this was my first exposure to the band. So it kind of has a soft spot in my heart. Don't Kill a Carol, awesome song. You Angel You, I think it's another Dylan song. I think it's Dylan. Excellent. So, Hollywood Town, Belle of the Earth, Angels at My Gate, Waiting for the Rain is absolutely hauntingly gorgeous. I love that song. And, you know, Resurrection has that kind of playful kind of, you know, religion for profit indictment going on about it. And I actually I think Mann sings on that one. And I kind of like his vocals. Kind of has a distinct voice.
He does. Yep.
He doesn't sing on a lot of tunes, but when he does sing, I kind of like it. I just love this album. And as you mentioned, the keyboards are, and I think he's kind of you know, that we're kind of getting some new wave territory here, like, you know, Don't Kill a Carol, especially. Um, and the keyboard sounds are just all over the album. It's like keyboard drenched. But there's still some, you know, still some good guitar as well. But the keyboard playing on this album is excellent. So if you like keyboards, I don't think you can go wrong with Angel Station. That's number 4.
Yep, great album. Great album. All right, my number 4. Gonna go with Messen from 1973. Like I mentioned before, easily their heaviest album. Man, the title track has just got big booming riffs and lots of guitar solos all over the place from Mr. Rogers. I think John mentioned Buddha, another terrific, heavy, but kind of like epic sounding piece. Cloudy Eyes, really cool instrumental, lots more guitars, a lot of guitar on this album. Get Your Rocks Off. There's almost kind of like a heavy boogie song, right? A little bit of Status Quo or Foghat type of thing. Sad Joy, another really great instrumental. It's got some great melodic bass from Colin Pattenden, and just a you know, not a lot of songs, but doesn't need to have a lot of songs. I think they come in, they make a statement, and does it in a really good way. And let me see if we can get kind of the full picture here of this album cover, which I always kind of dug this one as well. It's a little bizarre, but still pretty cool. And yeah, Messen. That's my number 4.
Okay. Okay, number 3 would be Watch for me. And yeah, excellent, another excellent cover. Yeah, this is a really, really excellent album. I think you mentioned, you know, the guitar work on this album is really good. And, you know, it's kind of combining great keyboards, great guitar all throughout. Circles, an excellent song. Drowning on Dry Land, same thing. Chicago Institute, kind of a heavier tune. I love it. And of course, you know, Davy's on the Road Again, Martha's Madman, Mighty Quinn, you know, 3 covers, and all 3 are just excellent. Excellent song, great keyboards all over the place. California is a really nice song as well, kind of a pretty song. Yeah, it's just a great album. And another one that I think after Angel Station, I think that was the next one that I heard. Love it. Love it.
Great stuff.
Number 3, I guess.
I was reading somewhere, and I hadn't heard this before, but that Dave Flett, the guitar player on that album, and
Right.
The Roaring Silence, and a couple other albums, that he was very, very briefly in Thin Lizzy. Go figure. I didn't know that. Yeah. Maybe it was. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know when. I'm going to have to do some research on that because I did not know that. Really good player. Another one of those guys that just kind of like disappeared into nowhere because he's. As much as I love Mick Rogers as well, I mean, Dave Flett was a really fine player as well. So
excellent. Yeah.
He's always had good musicians in this band. So. All right, my number 3, The Roaring Silence from '76, our biggest selling album, number 10 Billboard here in the States, Blinded by the Light, number 1 on the singles chart. A huge album for them. This is actually the first album with Chris Thompson and Dave Flett on board. Mick Rogers by now has already left. John mentioned all the great songs on here. You know, Singing the Dolphin Through is wonderful, dreamy melodic rock. Waiter, There's a Yawn in My Ear is loads of synths from Manfred Mann. The Road to Babylon is incredible. I mean, that chorus is just so good. This Side of Paradise, Starbird, Questions, all really great stuff. It's a great album. It was a big seller for a reason. And but another perfect example of how they mix like good pop rock with the grandioseness of prog and hard rock. I think it's just, they have like this string of albums that kind of does all of the above really, really well. And, you know, other than this album, I mean, no, they have some other decent sellers, but it's like, I think at times they kind of got overshadowed by some of the other bigger prog bands of that era, and kind of underrated, I think, in my opinion, who probably could have been bigger and should have been bigger. I know this was kind of like their big moment in the spotlight, but I think a lot of these albums should have been bigger sellers than they were. Looking back,
I totally agree. Yeah. It's kind of funny that way. I'm not sure why that is, but you just don't hear, you know, like, you know, you hear Yes, Genesis, you know, you just don't hear Manfred Mann talked about very much when we're talking about, you know, the classic, whatever, 7 or whatever they are, you know, Floyd, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You don't hear Manfred Mann come up too much, but
Do you think
I
because
think
they did too many covers, do you think that hurt them? I don't know.
maybe,
It's yeah,
maybe. But they changed those covers, so like they changed
yeah,
them up so
yeah,
much, and made them progressive sometimes, right?
yeah,
And which I think is, as probably just as hard to do as writing an original tune. I'm not a musician, but it's pretty amazing what they did with those covers. I mean,
yeah,
so, but that might have hurt them. Maybe it did.
yeah. I kind of look at them as in the same way the band Argent. I think Argent were also
Oh, yeah.
very similar in the way they kind of arranged their songs and things like that. And had their main guy was a great keyboard player, and they also had some success and they did some covers, but never really made it really big. And it's just kind of a shame because I think there was more room at the top for some of these kind of second tier prog bands,
Yeah.
and it's a shame. So before we get into our top 10, I got to ask you a question. How many times did you flip flop your 1 and 2 back and forth, and putting together this list? Up until like an hour before we went on air, I actually changed them again, and I've been doing it all week.
Yeah, many times.
Okay, so I'm not the only one. I've been struggling with this. I said, I wonder if John's having as much problems with this
Yeah.
one, because for me, my 2 top favorites are identically great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, like I said, I just moved them around again, and I'm gonna go with the way I just said them, but they're both awesome, and I don't think it really matters which one is 1 or which one is 2. They're both should be tied for 1. And for whoever's watching this show and maybe hasn't listened to Manfred Mann or knows very little bit about him, go out and get these 2 albums tomorrow or today, and just because we said so. They're that good, right? I'll let John go to his number 2.
Okay. Yeah, number 2. And yes, it kind of it was number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2, but it is Solar Fire. From what year is it? 1973.
73. Yep.
Yeah. I love this album, and again, it was a real pleasure going back and listening to this album. It's kind of like their space rock album almost. The title song, awesome. Father of Day, Father of Night, one of my favorite Manfred Mann songs. What else do we have? I mean, it's all just incredible. So I could go track by track, but the guitar work, the Moog, it's there all over the place. One of the best albums, one of the best albums from the 70s probably. It's right up there with, for me, it's right up there with Dark Side of the Moon, Close to the Edge, whatever. It's right up there for me. It's just an excellent album. Number 2, Solar Fire.
Yeah, it's my number 2 as well. And John's basically said it all here. It's an absolute drop-dead classic from start to finish. And I will say, if you are a fan of keyboard-heavy early 70s prog rock, and you love guys like Wakeman and Emerson and, all the usual suspects, this guy has got to be talked about in the same sentence as those dudes. Has to be. This is just, this is virtuoso keyboard work on here. And I'm not trying to forget about the other guys in the band, because Mick Rogers is absolutely breathtaking on this album as well on the guitar. But this is virtuoso keyboard textures and solos and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely amazing. And, again, those other guys get all the press. But I think Manfred Mann ranks right up there with all of them. He's just as impressive as all those guys. Absolutely. And again, listening, we talked about not listening to this band for a while, and sometimes you take for granted how amazing some of these musicians are. And I think I've always thought Manfred Mann, great keyboard player, but listening to these albums again, I'm like, geez, he's not just a really good keyboard player. He's a great keyboard player. Legendary. And these albums are proof of that. So we know what the number 1 is, right?
and I agree, Pete. It's kind of like the band itself, kind of underrated. Don't get talked about as much as the other, the first tier prog bands. And kind of same with Manfred Mann himself. I mean, he is, and I was thinking about that. Why isn't he regarded, in the same league as, Emerson, Wakeman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because he is a virtuoso, and I think he is, amazingly underrated, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, fantastic player for sure. And And of course, you know, the whole band, excellent players. Number one, Nightingales and Bombers. It just have to be that, of course. And because we, you know, went through 14 albums, and that's not
it's the only one left.
Anyway, number one. This is my brother's favorite album from the 70s, I think. And, you know, I love this album. Again, I was exposed to it kind of, you know, when I was younger. Spirits in the Night, you know, it's such a good song, you know, and a Springsteen song, but I love the lyrics. Can't credit that for Manfred Mann, or to Manfred Mann. Excellent keyboards, excellent guitar all through. Countdown, some Moog. The Moog is just awesome in it. What else do we have? I mean, it's all really good. The title track is an excellent song. Visionary Mountains, kind of ethereal, some nice crunchy riffs. It's a great tune. Quit Your Lowdown Ways, another kind of excellent. You know, guitar riffs, lead vocals are excellent. Mick Rogers is, you know, a fantastic guitarist and a fantastic vocalist all through this album. Yeah, the whole thing is just an excellent album. And I just can't stress enough how underrated this band is. I mean, as you say, you know, you got to get this album. If you like 70s music, 70s rock music, doesn't even have to be progressive, actually. If you like 70s hard rock, 70s classic rock, you know, Solar Fire, Nightingales and Bombers, we can list them all here. Roaring Silence are all excellent albums. And yeah, this, you know, I could have chose Solar Fire as my number one. Maybe next week it will be, but for this week it's Nightingales and Bombers from 1975.
It was my number one yesterday. Then I changed my mind again today. And the only thing I'll add, and because I think that John kind of described it perfectly, there are some tracks on here that if you're a like 70s jazz fusion fan, must hear. Like if you dig like Return to Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Lifetime, that sort of thing. There's a couple songs on here. Brand X comes to mind, right up that alley. And Visionary Mountains, to me, I was just listening to it yesterday. In fact, I posted on the Sea of Tranquility Facebook page. Kind of has that like same period Santana as well as like that first Journey album feel to it. It's very cool, very kind of hard rock and proggy and little bits of fusion. Really good. It's kind of atmospheric. And it's got these, you know, blazing mini Moog and guitars, just dynamite stuff. I mean, these, well, you know, I'll just start pulling them out. But I mean, these two albums are just top of the line. And then if you want to get like, you know, this is, if you're into like the kind of more proggy, fusion-y stuff, these are what you get. If you want some of the more, you know, still has some prog, but it's poppy, and, you know, then you go this album and Watch, you know, maybe Angel Station. If you want the heavier side of the band, you go Messen and Good Earth and maybe Glorified, Magnified. So, I mean, there's almost like there's like little mini eras to this band that you can kind of like, they would do like 2 or 3 albums in a row in a certain style, and then they would kind of jump into something else. And maybe that's another reason why they didn't do bigger business. You know, who knows? I don't know.
That could be like, but you said before, you know, they changed their sound a little bit. I mean, you know, you compare. I mean, Solar Fire is different than Nightingales and Bombers. I mean, and you know, and same with Roaring Silence. You know, compare it to Watch. Watch is maybe a little heavier. And then Angel Station, little, you know, some new wave on that one, but still, you know, proggy moments. Yeah, so maybe they didn't, but they still have a, you know, with Chris Thompson or Mick Rogers on vocals and excellent guitar work throughout, and Manfred Mann's keyboards, you still kind of know it's Manfred Mann, but they just kind of morphed into these different, you know, slightly different, I'm not going to say genres, but, and maybe that's why they just didn't catch on as, you know, as much as they really should have, because, you know, they're vastly underrated. And so I'm like you, I urge people to explore this stuff, because, you know, it's timeless music. I mean, this is, you know, and a lot of 70s music is, for sure. And, you know, Manfred Mann is right up there with for me it's a top tier prog band. It's not really a tier 1, but for most people, but I think they're just excellent albums.
Yep.
all through the 70s. So
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's what it's all about. So
yeah.
so we gave you an hour of some exhaustive discussion on Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and it was worth every second of it. So now everybody's homework who's watching is list these albums the way you rank them as you like them. Maybe you want to do your top 5, your top 10, whatever you want to do the whole catalog. I think the important thing is that we're discussing a great band who hopefully is not forgotten by folks. And if you haven't kind of if you never discovered these guys, or if you just kind of like us maybe haven't really dove into the music of Manfred Mann's Earth Band in quite a while, now's the time to do so, I think, because I've had a lot of fun listening to this catalog over the last couple of weeks, and I may not be putting these CDs away anytime soon. So that's what it's all about, right?
Well said. Yeah. It's been fun listening to some great music. Yeah, that's all there is to it. You got to go out in there and listen to these albums. They're just so good. So
absolutely
recommend them enough.
Yep. So there you have it, everybody. Manfred Mann's Earth Band. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org, where you'll find over 22,000 reviews of all sorts of stuff. John and I are featured very heavily in the review section over there. For John's been on board Sea of Tranquility now for like a decade. He's been one of my leading writers for a long time, and he's a treasure to have with us. So, and I'm happy he's here with us on YouTube as well now too. So check us out over there. Follow us on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So stay tuned for more stuff tomorrow morning. Martin Popoff's coming back on the show. We got another Canadian back on the show tomorrow. It's like the Canadian Express this week on Sea of Tranquility. So Martin Popoff coming tomorrow morning. We are each going to list our 10 favorite albums from the new wave of British heavy metal bands from 1979 to 1983 or so. And then all next week, all sorts of other stuff. So stay tuned. John will be joining us back in a couple of weeks. So John, thanks so much for today. For Jon Neudorf.
Thanks for all you do. Enjoy it.
We all do it together. It's a team effort here. It's a team effort.
That's
so for Jon Neudorf, I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
See you later.